Looking back, that seems so strange. Coming from such a cold, cold heart, she left a trail of tears across Arkansas. Things will be better out here on this land. Nothing here to hurt me. I'll make my stand. No one to break a promise, no one to say goodbye. Just me alone, dancing with my pride. I'll forgive her soon by the light of the prairie moon, imagining her kiss and sweet perfume. And I'll close my eyes and I'll see her face. In a dream I'll be the man I'd hope to be. But for now, things will be better out here on this land. Nothing here to hurt me. I'll make my stand. No one to break a promise, no one to say goodbye. Just me alone, dancing with my pride. No one to break a promise, no one to say goodbye. Just me alone, dancing with my pride. Love unexpected, love unrequited. Feels like trouble, then you try to fight it. Like the hurricane wind, like the timeless tide. You can't run, you can't hide. When a head and heart cannot be reconciled, when a grown-up love calls out to you and stirs your inner child, the heart knows there's a price that must be paid. The head knows that decisions must be made. Have tried everything you can, said all that can be said between a woman and a man, but just on gasoline on a blazing fire. Built a fence made out of dreams and razor wire. When a head and heart cannot be reconciled, when a grown-up love calls out to you, stirred out, the heart knows there's a price that must be paid. The head knows that decisions must be made. Well, it's a runaway train, it's a wrecking ball, it's a burning house, and it's bound to fall. But it's a mandolin ring in a hungry heart, where there's a longing in and a true love star. Hope springs eternal for the likes of you and me. And from 1,000 miles away, There's a candle I can see, like the hurricane wind, like the timeless tide. We can't run, oh, we can't hide. When the head and heart cannot be reconciled, when a grown-up love calls out to you and stirs your inner child, the heart knows there's a price that must be paid. The head knows that decision. The heart knows there's a price that must be paid. The head knows that decisions must be made. Good evening. Hope everybody's doing okay. Hope your Tuesday's treating you right. Hope your Monday was good. All that. Make sure everything's working here. I'm forever tweaking my setup because why not? It's not like I don't have the time. So, if you've been following us on these Tuesday nights, what I've been doing is taking, it's pretty dark. Is it too dark? I don't know. I think it's okay. It's more like a bar. Sort of. I can read, so it must be light enough. One of the things we've been doing on these Tuesday nights is taking a song off the new, my latest project, Beauty and Ruin, and kind of taking the song, not picking it apart, but just going into the book and looking at the inspiration behind the song. And those of you who have been following that know all that, so I'll spare you all the details. But it's been fun for me, and it's I've gotten a lot of good feedback. And honestly, it's been sort of a revelation to me because I go back and remember how this all happened. And often when you're in the middle of a project of any kind, you know, building a house or anything, you know, writing a record or whatever, stuff escapes you in the moment. You move through it so fast, sometimes you stop to remember it. So this has been helpful for me to go back and I've heard from the other writers on the project, and specifically about the one we're going to talk about today. And then I've been reading from my grandfather's book, which inspired the whole thing. Just for those who may be joining us late in the process and who haven't, been here for this, quick story. My grandfather was an author when I was young. He died in 1973, but the year before he died, he published a book, his final book, and it was called Of What Was, Nothing Is Left. And for whatever reason, just being young and reckless and into other things, I never read his books. And I'll always regret that because he wasn't, he isn't here to talk. But that's the lesson. So what we did about 2 years ago, we started on it, 2.5 years ago. My friend John Oates of Hall & Oates fame, who produced the two songs that you just heard before we came on from an album, 2 albums ago, he agreed to take this on. We all read the book, myself, John, a number of other songwriters that we knew, and everybody contributed songs. So either parts of songs or complete songs, or we all wrote songs together. It was kind of a combination of those things. We also republished the book. So the book is now available again, whereas I had to buy all the ones off of Amazon that they had, and to this day, I don't think you can find any more out there. I just don't think there were many published. So, book's available.
And then, of course, the CD is available. So we're on song number 4 now, I think. And the song tonight, if you're looking for a heavy, if you're looking for something light, maybe this isn't it. But I think it's an important song. Maybe the times we're in, the context, it's even a more important song than it was 6 months ago. And I always was pretty excited about having this one on the album. So of all the songs on here, this is the only one I didn't have anything to do with writing. Doug Williams and Telisha Williams, who play under the name Wild Ponies, either as a duo or as a band, were brought into the project at the suggestion of my friend Craig Shelburne, who's with the Bluegrass Situation down in Nashville. And he said, you know what, they write good songs, and they might be into this. So he introduced us, and we got together. They had already kind of written this song to a large extent when we finally met. And honestly, there were one or two lines that they weren't completely happy with. So I thought, well, I can squeeze in there somewhere and be part of this. But when it was all said and done, I didn't need to be a songwriter on it. I just wanted it on the record. And so that all worked out. They had written a beautiful song that addresses a recurring theme in the book, which is grief. And not just grief, but a very particular kind of grief, which is the grief that a parent would feel for a child at the loss of that child. The reason I think this is a good time to talk about it is the world is kind of full of grief right now, not just for the people that we've lost and the people who are suffering, but for the experiences we've lost, the way of life we may have said goodbye to and not know it yet. So not to get too intense, but there's a lot of that in the air, in my opinion. It's certainly been on my mind. And one of the reasons I think that is germane to my grandfather's story, besides just being in the book, he and my grandmother lost a couple of children very early on in their lives. One, I believe, probably didn't live much time at all, I think less than a year. So as a grandson of theirs, I was aware of that, but that all happened so long ago that we didn't really talk about it. It was just there. It was in the air, kind of like what we have in the air now with the pandemic and the loss of all these things that we used to take for granted. Doesn't surprise me now that I know as much about him as I do. I'm going to turn the light up just a little bit. Stay right there. That's better, right? I can actually see better, too. Before I go too much further, as it relates to this whole pandemic thing, Cindy and I are supposed to be in Dudley, England tonight. We would have played for our good friend Jan Brookfield for 5-6 years now has thrown a little shindig and asked me to play at it, and it's become one of the things I treasure about going over there. There are a lot of things. Each venue, each village, each town, each group of people is real special. But tonight would have been the night we played for Jan. Fish and chips in honor of us not being. Spoke to what the song is about, but also included information about where the writers on the songs, if there was a word or a phrase or a picture of something in the book, where we got it. So hoping to make it a little clearer. And then at the end of this session, I'll play the song, and we'll meet again next Tuesday night, if all goes well. So this song is called Bury the Young, and Doug and Telisha Williams wrote it. And I couldn't ask for a better song to be on this one. So Captain, and those of you who've been following, Captain is one of the main characters in the book, and he's kind of a larger-in-life character that this young man, Frank, goes to work for. Captain brings a bride into the situation. There's a child born under dubious circumstances with a traveling salesman. You get the picture. All kinds of bad stuff happens, and so we start the book with Frank looking back. And so from the very first page, we get a sense that loss is and ultimately grief is a big part of this. So I'm going to read. I've printed these out so I can see them better rather than have to find them in the book. He is gone now. His cotton fields, once so patiently tended by the Negroes, are choked with sassafras and persimmon sprouts, and overrun with old field pines, through which the winter winds sigh night and day, as if in mourning for those who once toiled, sweated, laughed, and cried here. So you can see right there, very first phrase in paragraph, talking about loss. Continuing. Around the family burying ground where so many of his kin have taken up their long sleep, the fence posts are rotten, the railings fallen in decay, and the gate, hanging on rusty hinges, cries like disturbed ghosts with each fresh gust of wind. Sitting on the rotting steps of the big house, through which mice scurry, and around whose walls the wind asks questions without answers at the doors and boarded windows, I can hear the clop-clop echoes of the Maud mule coming up the lane, and the captain's voice, not unlike the bellow of a huge bull at mating time, singing a song without words. So he's looking back, and he's pretty wistful about all that. And that sort of sets the tone for it. I noticed a minute ago before we came on in earnest that my friend in Michigan said this has got to be a movie. Well, we have a script written, so we actually thought so too. And a little aside, while we were making this record, I distinctly remember I was behind John Oates in the control room, and he was at the console, and I was on a sofa listening, and we were mixing, and he turned around and he said, "This has got to be a movie or a play." He said it has a cinematic feel to it, the music, and that's not by accident. We wanted it to sound that way, but the book led us there. It wasn't as if we had to conjure that up. The book set the scene for that. So these passages are not page after page. I just pulled these out to give you some sense of the dialogue. Reading again. I stepped back and watched him plow through the canes toward the old house, like a ship on the high seas. I hurriedly turned my back and walked a little ways. I expected to hear the shot that would topple the old patriarch from his saddle, but no blast broke the stillness. The next sound I heard was a loud cry of anguish from the throat of the captain. Now what's going on here is the captain's son, who isn't technically his son, but who he raised him as his son, loves him like a son. He's meeting an untimely end, and the captain is there at that point. I rushed to the door of the house and saw the old man seated on the floor with Jody's head on his lap. He tenderly stroked the boy's forehead, now damp with death. Jody clung to him and cried, "I'm sorry, Dad. Tell Mother I'm so sorry." And then the captain's voice, like a mother talking to a sick child, "It's all right, son. Your old dad understands." "Your hands are so warm," the boy sobbed. "I've been cold so long." We saw a tremor pass over the boy's body. Then a mist crawled up out of the canebrake. The frogs chorused. We heard Laurel Creek as it tumbled over the dam, and it was midnight inside me. We heard the wind mournfully through the trees, and the voice of Captain as he wept like King David of old at the death of his son Absalom. "Oh, my son, my son." The officers hurriedly reached for their hats, and then there was not a dry eye among them. The captain asked to carry Jody's body home on the Maud mule. I was sent ahead to break the news to his mother. She stood on the porch and shaded her eyes from the late afternoon sun. She was such a lonely figure in a world so full of holes of loneliness that it was difficult to step around her. Right there, that's some sad stuff. And that begins to paint the picture for where Doug and Telisha got this song. And there's more to it than just the book, by the way, and I'll get to that. But one of the things they wanted to impart to people in this song as songwriters was that it ain't right. It just isn't right for a parent to bury a child or for the old to bury the young. So that was the idea. And it obviously didn't feel right in that scene. So now we've moved ahead to when neighbors begin coming over after the boy is passed. The neighbors came. They brought food and stayed to help eat it. They made a Roman holiday of the occasion. They took more away than they brought in beholding grief. They took more away than that brought in beholding grief and it not their own. Maybe a typo there. Essentially, they took more than they brought. Would we bury him in the family plot? Laura wondered. The captain answered angrily. Where else is there to bury our boy? Throughout the night they held a vigil by the bed where Jody lay. They held each other's hands and said little. What was there to be said? They stared at the naked walls, and like the slow ticking of the old clock on the mantel, they asked over and over, why? Why? If there was an answer, they came no closer to finding than did Eve when she held Abel's lifeless head on her lap. So you can see out of those two passages, there's some biblical references. My grandfather was a Sunday school teacher, and I always knew that about him. It was important to him, and that was a big part of his life. And so there's a fair bit of biblical reference in the book and in all of his writings, and it has to do with the right and wrong and what he valued in the world. So let's put all that in context, and then let's talk about what Doug and Telisha brought to it that wasn't in the book. And this fascinated me because as songwriters, it would be easy to take what I just read and go, okay, there's enough there to work with, but not these two. And I asked Doug today, I said, can you send me a little synopsis? Because I've heard him talk about it when we've done the song together, but I wanted to make sure I got it right. So one of his professors, Nikki Giovanni, wrote about the death of Tupac Shakur. And in the middle, she talked about his mother. And so there was a fair bit in that poem, and I'm not going to read it because it's very, very long, but you can find it on YouTube. And it's very moving and very powerful. So she was his professor. Nikki Giovanni was Doug's professor at Virginia Tech. And when we talk about in this song, when I do it here in a minute, there's a line about limestone markers, and that's a nod specifically to the Hokie Stone memorials for the shooting victims at Virginia Tech. Something else that happened during the writing of this song, they began working on the song, and right about the time they were finishing up, or maybe in the middle of it, and I could have all that wrong, but let's just say it's concurrent, the Parkland shooting happened in Parkland, Florida. And all those young people rose up and said, you know, we don't have to live like this. We don't have to accept this. This isn't how it has to be. And some of them, I think, and Doug and Telisha agreed, obviously, that some of those people showed a great deal of courage for their circumstance and their age. So I say all that, read all that, put all that together to give you an idea of what can go into a song and how many layers. Think of it as a layer cake. There's so many layers, and you dig down and you dig down, and just when you think you know what one thing means, it means something else. And that's the beauty of this project for me, because everybody brought something like that to it, and it made it such a more rich experience. So the song is called "Bury the Young." Again, I'm honored to have it on the record, and the record is better for it. But I'm gonna go ahead and play it. And I know this is a dark subject; it's a heavy subject, but it's something we've all dealt with or will deal with in our lives, grief, that is. And I think to some extent, as a society, we're dealing with it right now. And I think just like doing that song "Rise Up Again," you gotta push back against what isn't right that's going on now. I could go on and on, but this is not the time or place. And I listened to this song again today. I hadn't listened to it in a little bit, and there's so many great performances on it. The guys just heard it, saw the lyrics, and went, "We know what to do," and they did it, and it turned out beautifully. So this is written by Doug and Telisha Williams. It's on my new record. It's called "Bury the Young." Eve's tears fell on Abel. King David wept for Absalom. Mother Mary was forsaken, and they laid her precious boy behind the stone. Mothers shouldn't grieve their babies. Fathers shouldn't mourn their sons. Lay their hope beneath the daisies. It's not right for the old to bury the young. It's not right for the old to bury the young. Folded flag upon the mantle, limestone markers shining in the sun. 17 birthday candles I ain't never gonna burn for anyone. Mothers shouldn't grieve their babies. Fathers shouldn't mourn their sons. Lay their hope beneath the daisies. It's not right for the old to bury the young. It's not right for the old to bury the young. We're gonna fix what you left broken. We're gonna do what you left undone. Thoughts and prayers are empty tokens. We are your daughters and your sons. Mothers shouldn't grieve their babies. Fathers shouldn't mourn their sons. Lay their hope beneath the daisies.
It's not right for the old to bury the young. It's not right for the old to bury the young. It's not right for the old to bury the young. Let's bury the young. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending time with me tonight. We'll do it again next Tuesday. And I don't remember what the next song coming up is, so it'll be a surprise to all of us. Be nice to everybody. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Do all the right stuff. And